Hey friends, today I'm chatting with Bob Parsons, Vietnam vet and PTSD survivor and thriver. We're talking a little about psychedelics and how they helped save him and restore him. Bob, anything to add?
Well, Maria, I'm going to tell you today what it was like for me to finally come home and get past all that PTSD I was suffering from. And coming home is a great place to be. And hopefully this will help a lot of your listeners come home too.
I'd love that. All right, friends, don't forget to hit subscribe. Hello, everybody. Welcome to Better Together. When you know better, you get better. That is our goal here, our mission every single day. Our quote for today: never stop investing, never stop improving, never stop doing something new. That is from Bob Parsons. Heal Squad. Welcome back to Better Together. We are very excited to be chatting with Vietnam vet, billionaire, entrepreneur, philanthropist, and PTSD and psychedelics healing trauma, I guess, expert at this point because he's healed himself. We're going to be chatting with him today about how psychedelics helped save him as a returning vet and what he's doing to help other vets and putting his money where his mouth is. Very excited to chat with Bob Parsons today. Seems like a character.
Oh my gosh, I know. I'm really excited. He's a character, but he's also, I was reading that Forbes article, Maria, and I was just like, every sentence, I was like, holy cow. Like, he's amazing. He's
pretty cool. So this is a guy who bought a Rolls Royce. Like he says like he's kind of like a regular guy. I think he'd be a really good regular guy interview for Kevin, by the way.
I know. You know what's funny? I actually originally had him with Kev because I was like, oh my God. Funny. Yeah, I was like, Kev, you guys will bond, but Maria, you're going to be amazing with him too. So it's perfect.
Well, so he bought a Rolls Royce and then he took the emblem off and put a Chevy emblem on it. So and then he still returned it.
Oh my God. Bob.
I was like, that's something Kevin would do, I feel like. He put like his Ford Ranger symbol on it or something.
So funny.
But I don't know if you guys have any experience with, people in the service being in your family. Was your dad in the service at all, Kelsey?
No, I don't have many at all. I have like friends, close friends who had like a lot of, my dad's like best friend, his whole family. So I get his whole history, but none of mine were.
So my dad was a lieutenant in the Greek army.
That's right. He was.
And so he has lots of stories, and I have his uniform. I wore it for Halloween once. And I think that was when my butt was a little smaller.
Oh my God.
But my dad, served in Greece, but I always felt such a kinship, such a connection to the troops. And years ago I had signed up, years ago I had pitched a story to the Today Show to do something in Iraq. And I think it was around young girls in school. Well, that was in Afghanistan. I had pitched that, but then I'd also pitched something else in Iraq, and I was going to do these stories. And I'll never forget, my executive producer sat me down, and, they had the chief of like news sit me down, and they're like, so when you get kidnapped, we're the ones negotiating your head. And
oh my gosh.
It's like, excuse me? And they're like, yeah, there's no FBI. It's us negotiating your head. And I was like, so you didn't just say if, you said when. They're like, yeah, when. And I'm like, okay. And I think they were trying to scare me out of wanting to go.
For sure.
Because, sometimes when I hire people, I want to scare them away from the job because I don't want the wrong people taking the job. I want the people who aren't afraid to work are going to like jump in and do it. So I used to be like, no, this is like really, really hard. And like, I'd overdo it to see who could like
hang.
So I think they were doing the same thing with me. And I just left and started studying Krav Maga and Arabic because I was like, well, if I'm going to get kidnapped, I need to be able to negotiate my head.
Oh my God.
So
can you speak any of it?
What?
Can you speak any?
Not now. No, I don't remember anything.
But you learned a little bit. I love it.
But what happened was they ended up not letting me go. And I was so brokenhearted. And I signed up to do a not a USO tour specifically, not that brand. There was another one. And I went with Kelly Hu and David Preval from The Sopranos. And I went to Afghanistan for 10 days. And I was like just so happy. It was such an incredible trip. It was so great to be there with everybody and to feel like, you were, I don't know, helpful, I guess is like kind of the only word. But I felt like I belonged there. So I would be like unloading planes and helping them in every way I could. And they would pass you these coins, which meant that they were really grateful for you, coming, and they'd shake your hand and then you'd get a coin. And
oh my gosh.
Like, whoa. And I had so many coins. It was like so special. And then I remember when I interviewed Brian Weiss. I don't think I've spoken about this interview in this book enough on this show. I interviewed him as part of my Sirius XM show when I was transitioning into the podcast. And so it's really, really back in the files. And he had written a book called Many Lives, Many Masters. And I felt like when I read that book, I was sobbing on a flight from London to LA. It just kind of explained life and all of its mysteries to me at once. And I had to do the interview. It was like soon after brain surgery. And we did a little regression, like a past life regression together. And I remember seeing soldier boots on my feet and like I was in the desert and stuff. And so I feel like now I understand why I love them so much and I feel so connected to them. And I said to them when I was there, I'm like, I would totally stay if I could kind of do what I wanted to do. I can't do push-ups and stuff. And they would laugh.
Yeah, they're like, well trained.
I'll do whatever. I just don't want to do that stuff.
Dead. That's wild.
Yeah, it was
though.
Funny.
The Brian Weiss stuff is like, I'm so moved by it too. Like having just read that book, I think that's so cool. And I've heard you tell that story before. Oh, you just
read it. That's right. I forgot.
Oh, and like I've heard you tell that story before, but now that I've read the book and understand, I'm like, holy cow, like that's so powerful.
So what did you take from the book?
To be honest, it was like, I always thought that we've lived many lives. And I did that session with a friend, one of your friends, John McNaught, and he kind of went through my past lives, and I felt super connected to a couple things that he said. So this to me just like reinstated that, and it was just really powerful, and just the whole idea of like we do go somewhere after we die, and we do live these many lives, and we come in soul tribes, and that feeling when you feel like you've known someone forever, but you've never met them, like that's real, and they've probably been in a past life. I just thought it was a really, really powerful book and not super woo-woo. I mean, Brian is not a woo-woo person. He was just a practitioner that kind of did this
fell upon this with his client.
Yes.
Yeah.
So I thought that was very powerful too. I really loved it. I really loved it.
Yeah. So basically he, and I haven't read this in so long, so I'm not going to remember like you, but he had a client and this whole past life regression thing just kind of happened with them. And so he went on this ride and then wrote about it. And it was really powerful. So we should add that on my website, mariamenounos.com, under favorite books, if it's not there, because we might have forgotten that one.
I will add it.
And just a little plug, actually, because we do have all of my favorite books on there for you to peruse. I only picked my top favorites, but listen, sometimes I forget. And this is definitely one of my top favorites. Pooja, do you have any experience with anybody in the service?
No, my family wasn't. In India, I think like my grandfather's grandfather, but no one I knew personally.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, not too many friends either.
Yeah, my neighbor's brother was in the Operation Desert Storm, I think it was, the first war in Iraq. And we were out on the snow mound with our flags on like the main road by our house, and people were honking, and we would just sit out there like supporting the troops. Oh. I remember that story too, actually. So anyhow, today we are going to talk to a very important member of the service. So Bob Parsons is an American entrepreneur, billionaire, philanthropist, possibly best known for being the founder of GoDaddy. He is a U.S. Marine Corps Vietnam vet, a recipient of the Purple Heart Medal, Combat Action Ribbon, and Vietnamese Cross of Gallantry. Bob is a survivor of PTSD, and he's a huge advocate for mental health. Today, he's going to be talking to us about his journey with PTSD and what he found that is working for him and truly changing his life. So we're going to take a quick break. When we come back, we will welcome Bob Parsons.
Well, I'm happy to tell you whatever you want to know.
Well, I know that you've had an incredible journey. And, you really are that kind of American dream story, coming from nothing and succeeding so wildly. I guess, do you feel like you kind of have it in you all along? It just finally pops out?
Maria, this is going to sound very much like a non-answer, but I can tell you that's one thing I never thought about. I just thought about what I had to do. I learned so much as I went through the various tribulations in my life. I grew up in East Baltimore. Both my parents were gamblers. We lived in a lower class, blue class neighborhood, and I could tell you we were one of the brokest. So we never had any money, always lots of debt, that sort of thing. I was terrible in school, failed the fifth grade. But the fifth grade was one of my big learning things, and the reason it was is because I never had to repeat it. And the reason I didn't have to repeat it is because when report cards were handed out, Sister Brenda was our teacher then, and she gave everybody a report card except for me, Frankie, and Anthony. And she said, I'll be back and I will deal with you guys later. And she took the line out to meet the parents, right? Well, we all had failed. So what I did was I decided I did not want to wait. I needed a nun-free summer. So when she left, I took off and ran around the whole building and beat them, where they would go around a big corner to get down to where the parents were. And I knew two things. I knew about when they would get there, and I knew that Sister Brenda was a very lazy nun. She would never walk the whole way. She'd break off before the corner and go back. So I was standing against the wall on his corner when the class line walked around. I fell in back of them, went across the street. My brother was there with my father. He was showing my dad his report card. My dad says, where's your report card? And I said, Sister didn't give me one. And actually, she hadn't. And then he goes, you didn't get one? I said, yeah, Dad, this year, if you, and I can still see him now. We're walking across the street to get to his Rambler. He's got a racing form in one hand, a cigarette in the other. And he says, how come you didn't get one? I said, this year, if you pass, you to get a report card. And he goes, he takes the cigarette, flips it into the street, and he says, all right, whatever, get in the car. And off we went. So we went to the sporting goods store. He was getting the stuff for passing, He was telling my brother to put some of the stuff back, and I'm there and sinking in. I said, Dad, I don't need anything. He said, I'll get something. So I got a first baseman's mitt, went home, went through the same thing with Mom. And my mother said, I never heard of such a thing. And I said, my call Sister. Well, she never did. And Maria, the school never called. Never called. So I'm there all summer long, and I'd wake up in the morning and I'd think, oh man, it's so good, no school, and then it would wash over me. I was on death row. So my buddies would come up to me and they would say, Robert, what's wrong? I said, nothing. He goes, looks like somebody shot your dog. I said, no, everything's fine, because I knew if I told anybody, be all over the place. So there's a lot more to it, but fast forward to the first day of school. I go to school and get in line with the sixth graders, which is the rest of my class. St. Elizabeth's had one grade for each year, or one class for each year. And Frankie and Anthony were in Sister Brenda's line. And so they rang the bell, and the kindergartners went in first, second, third, fourth. And fifth went in, and I went in, and this sister that year was Sister St. Thomas. She pulled me out of line, and she held me against the wall. Her nose was about an inch from mine, and she says, Sister Brenda told me what you did. And she said, she told me that you failed, but you didn't wait around. You took off. And I'm just looking at her, and she says, but she didn't know what to do, so she passed you. And then she says, you give me one bit of trouble, you're going right back to the fifth grade. So that's how I made it into the sixth grade with fifth grade skills.
Wow. So I was expecting you to say that she was going to put you back in the fifth grade line and say, you got to repeat.
No, didn't happen. So, I wish I could tell you I did better that year. I just barely squeaked through to the seventh grade. But what I learned that year is sometimes things just work out if you just hang in there. And I did, and they did. And, you could argue one way or another, but I can tell you, had I not done that, my life probably be completely different.
You gambled.
Well, you might say that I took incredible
yeah, because I was going to ask you how your parents being gamblers may have affected you, good or bad, because I feel like just from the research and reading about you, you do seem like somebody that is not afraid of taking risks. And obviously you took a big risk in the fifth grade and it worked out. So I wonder if that kind of little gambling thing, in a sense, helped you.
Well, that is one of the biggest risks that I ever took, which you could quantify as a gambler. But it's true that my parents are gamblers. But, when I take a chance, there's a really good, I believe the odds are in my favor. And so I don't take my chances on a blackjack table or a horse track or that sort of thing where they clearly are not. So I'm very different than mom and dad were in that respect. And then the next big learning experience I had is I joined the Marine Corps when I was 17. My mother had to sign, so I'd get in. I was in high school. I was failing most subjects, and I thought for sure I was going to repeat. And I had some buddies come and talk to me after gym one day, and they said, we're going to go talk to the Marine Corps recruiter. Do you want to go? And I said, sure, I'd love to go. We all wound up joining at the same time. And I remember I got my mother to sign for me. The the recruiters told me, he says, we're going to have to check your grades. And I'm going, oh my goodness. But, a couple of weeks later, when I came back and got through all the stuff that the initial screening stuff the military did, he said to me, Robert, we believe you'll make a fine Marine. And so I don't think he checked too close, but there you go. And so anyhow, we came home. It was three of us. It was me, my buddy Charlie, and my buddy Aggie Sorokas. Sadly, Aggie, this is East Baltimore. Aggie was stabbed to death during boot leave. So he never even made it to Vietnam.
Oh my gosh.
Charlie and I went, and I went to 26 Marines, and Charlie went to a different unit, and when I got to my unit in Vietnam, they were on top Hill 190 in Quang Nam Province, and it was rice paddies as far as you could see on one side. On the other side, it was jungles and mountains, and so I wasn't with my squad long enough to find out that they had just been ambushed, and to a senior man, all the senior guys were killed. So the guy who had been there the longest had been there 6 weeks. That was the senior man. He just turned 19. Turned out to be marvelous, by the way. And I didn't know it at the time. So I went and sat on this wall overlooking this valley below where we were. And I remember when I was there looking, I was thinking, how in the world am I going to survive this? I mean, the guy who has been here the longest has been here 6 weeks. Everybody else is left in a bag or a stretcher. And it was tough. It was tough to get it through your head. And so, and our tour is 13 months versus the other forces, which were 12 months. That's the Marine Corps. And so I remember thinking, I was just this internal struggle, if how I was going to get past this. And then it hit me. Something happened to me. And Marie, I'm telling you, this all went together in about 15 minutes. What occurred to me was, I'm not going to make it. This is where I'm going to die. And at 18 years old, I accepted that. And when I accepted that, calmness came over me, and it was just, it just was quite a transformation from the anxiety just a few minutes before. And I made myself 2 promises. My first promise was that I would do everything I could to do my job as a combat Marine to the best of my ability for my buddies that even though I didn't know them yet, and the people back home, and if at all possible, I'd be alive for mail call the next morning. So I wasn't with the squad for 4 hours when I seen my first face-to-face combat. And so Marine was hurt horrifically that night. I saved a guy's life that night. And what a night it was. The guys whose life I saved, he was alive to save mine. And and that's just the way it worked. The next night, we were walking through some rice paddies, and the point man decided to walk on the rice paddy dike. Now, walking through a rice paddy is a nasty thing. Water's a couple feet deep and the mud's a couple feet deep, and it's all sorts of vermin and stuff, but mostly it's hard to walk through. So walking on the rice paddy dikes is easy. North Vietnamese knew it's easy, so that's where the traps were. So Marine got up on and started walking, and wasn't 5 minutes, he blew his legs to shreds. And I remember carrying him about a mile to the medevac point. And that's the kind of the way it went. The next night, we sprung an ambush and did what we were there to do. And I lasted 1 month to the day. And I got hurt walking through a village at night, and I hit a tripwire. And when it was a hand grenade, it blew up, blew my pants off, my shirt sleeve off, took shrapnel both legs, left elbow. I remember I reached over to stop the bleeding on one of my legs, and the joint was outside of the arm. That got my attention. So then I was medevac to Japan, and then I was there for a couple of months. And after I was mostly healed, I in the Army and the other armed forces, if you were wounded, you were pretty much out of combat if you wanted to be. In the Marine Corps, 3 times, of course. So I was sent back to the bush. And on my way back to the bush, through a number of things happening, I was assigned to Marine Corps intelligence. Now, consider my academic record. I had to be exactly the kind of guy they were looking for. But I did a couple things. I ran a little printing press, and I flew back and forth to Vietnam delivering orders as a courier. Keep in mind, there was no internet then, or cell phones or anything like that. You had papers you wanted transferred. You had to carry them. So that was that's what I did, and never went back to combat again. I volunteered to go back to my unit 3 times. And each time it didn't work out. The second 2 times I had a gunnery sergeant in my unit look at my orders, look at my transfer request. He was the last guy that had to sign off. And he said to me, he says, "What are you going to go back there for?" I said, "Sir, I want to be with the guys I serve with." And that's a bond that plays big into PTSD treatment for veterans. I said, "I just want to be with them." And he said, "You've already done what you need to do." I said, "Sir, I want to be with them." And he says, "Denied. You'll get yourself killed." Tore it up twice.
Wow. It's unbelievable to think like your day one and day two, you're already seeing such horrific things. That's like a lot.
Well, let me give you an example. The war in Vietnam. The war in Vietnam, the scope of it is so much larger than one would tend to think. In the war in Afghanistan, which is no joke, right? Those guys that served there, man, they did their job. Average casualties a week was 150 killed or wounded both sides.
Which one?
Huh?
In which war?
Afghanistan, the Afghanistan war, which ended just recently. And then in Vietnam, when I was there, that number was 32,000 a week.
Oh my. Yeah, because war is different now.
Yeah. Well, it was different then compared to what we have now. For weapons, we might as well had swords back then. But
yeah, I went and visited the troops in Afghanistan, and I drove the first MRAP that they got. I mean, they have so much more equipment now than, you guys had. It's a different thing. It's wild to hear those numbers.
Yes, it's unbelievable. Unbelievable.
It really is unbelievable.
One of the things I had a friend of mine just tell me about the Vietnam War, and other guys served there. The squad leader, as a matter of fact, the guy that was there 6 weeks, he said during the First World War, there were more Marine Corps casualties during the Vietnam War than during the first two world wars.
Wow.
Yeah. So, it was no joke. It was, it was the real thing. And so eventually when I came home, I was a different guy in a lot of ways. Before I went there, I was pretty happy-go-lucky, irresponsible, I'd say. Wanted to be, like to be around people, like to do things and so forth. When I came back, I was completely different in good ways and bad ways. First, the good way is I worked as a laborer in a steel mill for a year, and then I decided to go to college. And I went to the University of Baltimore because they had a deal for veterans. You just needed to finish high school. Your grades didn't matter. No entrance exams. Pretty much all you needed was the GI Bill. And so I did that. Studied accounting, graduated magna cum laude. Nobody could believe it. And then
because you have a new discipline that you have, right? There's a discipline that you didn't have before that now you just get when you're in the Marine Corps.
No. What the Marine Corps taught me, discipline and responsibility, but discipline not in the sense of punishment, but although there was plenty of that, okay?
For you.
Discipline in the sense that if you have a job to do, you got to have the backbone to do it. Doesn't matter if you like it or not, you have to honor your responsibilities for the people that are counting on you. So that's the discipline that they got through my head. And they also taught me two other things. First, they taught me I could do so much more than I thought I could. And they taught me I had a right to be proud.
Mm.
So that translated to me graduating magna cum laude, passed the CPA exam the first time. I went ahead and after passing the CPA exam, always had a business on the side in addition to my job. I was a worker bee, and I started 3 businesses that turned out to be something. One of them was Parsons Technology, my first software company. I invested $40,000 in that and sold it for $64 million. GoDaddy, I came the skin of my teeth close to going broke, but didn't. Hung in there like I did on the 5th grade and in Vietnam. And I wound up making a couple $1 billion on that deal. And now I have 14 businesses and all sorts of things. And the most notable, which is PXG, we make golf equipment. We make the finest golf clubs in the world. So that's kind of that's the good part.
Good to know. I might be moving to a golf course. So now I know what golf clubs to get if I'm going to start learning to play golf.
Well, there you go. 100%.
PXG.
Yeah. All right. We'll take good care of you, Maria. Now, after I came home, there was a lot of changes in me that weren't so good. I had a flash temper. I had didn't want to be around people. Didn't want to go anywhere. I was depressed. Every once in a while, I'd have all that stuff come up in the background, and I just push it down the way most vets do. If I cried, I'd make sure I was alone. And I just dealt with it. And I can tell you, in some ways, the PTSD probably contributed to me, having, what success I've had.
Oh, you're making me cry. Damn.
but in other ways, it made my life and the life for those around me much more difficult. It most certainly cost me 2 marriages. And my 3rd wife, who I'm married to now, Renee, is the love of my life. And she stuck with me like you can't imagine. Now, the turning point for all this for me the big turning point was I read Michael Pollan's book, How to Change Your Mind. And boy, did that make a difference. At least it provided hope. And I had never taken psychedelics, I thought, like most people do, if you take a psychedelic, the person next to you turns into a snake or something like that. Well, that doesn't happen. But so anyhow, so I told her, I said, I'd like to try it. And I'd like to try it. And she had me hooked up with 2 people to guide me through it within 2 weeks. Told me I didn't have an issue. So she hooked me up, and I met with these people in Hawaii, and I took psychedelics 3 days over a period of 4 days, and it was all guided. It was not an easy thing.
And it was microdosing, right?
No.
No? Oh, it was the full.
I was much more than microdosing. I needed a steamroller. So I first day I took ayahuasca, and that did what it did. The next day, and I have this constitution that psychedelics, they work, but they don't affect me and in hallucinations and all the stuff like they do other people, right? And I don't know why, but that's just the way it is. So my guide fixed this pot of tea made of psilocybin, and he said, I made it very strong, so you'll just need 1 cup. So I drank that 1 cup, wind up drinking all 3 cups, and ate the tea bags. And I still, I had a righteous buzz going, and we did a lot of talking, a lot of tears, and so forth. And the next day I took off, and the final day I took LSD. And after that, people could not believe the change in me. I mean, I was always described as the most intense person they've ever met, right? And because of the PTSD, and I was, all of a sudden, I was kind. I was willing to listen. My temper was gone. I enjoyed being with other people. I mean, all those things that were absent. Maria, it had been 48 years since the war, and I finally came home.
Wow. So this was during your GoDaddy time, probably.
No, I think it was after that. I might have still been
after. So you were succeeding wildly despite the PTSD.
Yes.
And then you found yourself after.
Mm-hmm.
Wow. You white knuckled a lot.
Oh, I did. And I can tell you, I've often thought about how much of it was the PTSD, my success, and I can tell you, my businesses are moving like they always have, but the big difference is people enjoy working with me more.
I'll tell you, I understand the feeling in a different way. My husband, I recently started these new meditations. It's more than meditation. It's about transformation. It's a man called Dr. Joe Dispenza. If you haven't heard of him, you should look him up. It's pretty profound. And my husband's like, what alien took my wife? And who are you? Because you're waking up very happy every day and you're super positive and everything is can do. And I'm like, I white knuckled forever. And now I feel so free and so good. Everyone finds their thing or finds their way. But I understand that kind of feeling. Feels good.
Well, I help now I help a number of veterans when I'm aware that they have an issue. And I do it now using all the legal remedies that are available. And some work pretty well. The one that
what?
Well, one of them is an SGB block, a stellar ganglion block, where PTSD is primarily centered around the amygdala in the front of your brain. And people that have PTSD, they tend to, when they're in a stressful situation, they tend to release far more adrenaline than somebody that doesn't, and epinephrine. And cortisol is the thing our body uses to slow it down. They release less cortisol than someone that doesn't. And so they have a much different time dealing with it. And they tend to lose their temper more and that sort of thing. And the thing that I try to get across to the people that I talk to is you may think it's you, and it is physically you, but you're not throwing the switches here. You got to get this handled, and then you'll be who you should be. Okay, so what the stellar ganglion block does is, knowing that the amygdala communicates to the body through the stellar ganglion nerves in the neck, doctors will take and use like the big brother of lidocaine and use an ultrasound. They inject it in the neck next to the stellar ganglion nerves, and it numbs the nerves. And when it does, the amygdala goes offline. And when it goes offline, a couple things happen. First, usually they get a droopy right eye. They talk like a pirate, right? And that sort of thing. And then a couple of hours later, when the anesthetic wears off, the amygdala reconnects. And it reboots, and it reboots, and many times close to the way it should be. And the difference for people doing that is profound, because they're feeling the way they should be without PTSD.
How long does it take to get that result?
10 minutes.
Wow.
And, see, here's the thing. I know that, a lot of times for most of us, matter of fact, I'd say for all of us, life in itself is stressful. And there's moments when we have to reconcile with each other and deal with stuff that upsets us. And God forbid, stuff like accidents or being a victim of crime or being in a combat situation that throws you into PTSD. So we all have it to a certain degree.
Mm-hmm.
Well, this SGB block works so good and makes such a difference. I have many people who didn't think they had anything to it, and what a difference it makes. They lose their temper less at work. They're easier to work with. They have better ideas. So the majority of my staff has all had it done, and there's only one downside with it. It usually lasts 6 months to a year or 2 years.
You have to do it again.
And so they do it again. And be honest with you, they come and ask me. I think I'm ready, and I said, let's go do it, right? And
where do you go to do this?
Well, there's a business called SGB Centers. I use a friend of mine, Dr. Peter Lynch, in his business. He's been doing it for 15 years. Now, the problem with this and why you don't hear about it is, like so many things, Big Pharma cannot make any money on it.
Why?
Well, because number one, it's pretty much a doctor's procedure. It is pretty much, and it just hasn't become uber popular. Now that's starting to change, but I think the pharmaceutical stuff like the lidocaine, they use like $15 or $20 worth of that. So there's no money in it.
So how do they administer this?
Well, it's usually in a very sterile place, looks like an operating room. They have an ultrasound machine there. They screen the patients well to make sure they're good candidates, and it's done. And the crazy part about it is, I just had it done again for about the fourth time or fifth time, and each time the guy finishes, and I don't even know he started. He goes, "Okay, we're done." I mean, it is.
But what do? They inject you with something?
Yeah. They inject you with an anesthetic, which is like a little stronger than lidocaine, right next to the nerves, and the anesthetic numbs the nerves, and that's how it causes the amygdala reset. SGB block.
It's like trauma Botox.
Well, you know what? I've never looked at it that way, but I'm going to tell him you said that.
Yeah, that's what it feels like.
And I can have, I've sent people there for all sorts of stuff. I sent a little girl there who couldn't sleep, couldn't study, couldn't do anything because when she was a few years younger, she had cancer, went into remission, and now she spent all her time worried about getting cancer again. Completely removed it. Now she's a star pupil, happy as can be. I mean, one lady that I helped was relative to one of the people that I work with. She was a victim of an attempted rape, and she was able to fight it off, but it really rocked her. And so this gave her life back.
Wow.
And I mean, and on and on. And many veterans. Another group of people I help is NFL football players for the CTE that they're dealing with and so forth. This goes a long way to helping them.
Wow.
Yeah.
And so the only side effect you've seen is the droopy face, and that goes away?
Yeah, in a few hours.
Oh, okay. Well, I got a brain tumor, so I don't know if I'm going to mess with that because it sounds a little scary, but I love that there's something that can kind of reboot you. And you said that's the legal stuff. What's the illegal stuff? Is ayahuasca technically illegal?
Ayahuasca is, I believe it's, all the psychedelics are, with the exception of hape, which is primarily nicotine.
Mm-hmm.
And other Amazonian herbs, that's not illegal. If you want to consider it a psychedelic. But the rest, MDMA, magic mushrooms, LSD, ayahuasca, DM 5-DMAO3 or whatever that's called. I think they're all Schedule 1.
Oh, wow.
Which
And
makes no sense.
Yeah.
But that's another story.
So you also are funding research that has already passed phase 3, or it's in phase 3?
I believe it's in phase 3. We're doing that with MAPS and Rick Doblin, who's one of my heroes in all of this. So, we're working with we help fund the next field trials for MDMA, which we hope will be the ones that pushes it over the top. And hopefully that'll happen next year. And if it does, it's a game changer. It's a total game changer. And to take, this can take somebody, a veteran with classic PTSD, right? Untreatable PTSD, and cure it in 3 sessions.
I just got the chills all the way down my body.
Yeah, and that'll do it 67% of the time. And the ones that are completely cured are significantly cured.
Wow. I can see the goosebumps. So phase 3 is that's the final stage before you get FDA clearance.
Yeah, well, I think so, yes.
So that means you're hoping next year you'll have FDA clearance to be able to start treating soldiers with PTSD.
Yeah, in a therapeutic situation. Now, one thing to point out about psychedelics in this here is this psychedelic, the therapy does the healing. The guide does the healing. The psychedelic makes it possible. So if somebody wants to say, well, I want to try that, and they go out, get some mushrooms, take them and sit in a closet for 6 hours, they're not going to be a different person. So you need the therapy, and some of the stuff just needs to come out. And I can remember some of the stuff when I was being treated. With mushrooms, I cry. I don't ever remember crying that hard. And afterwards, it was only one thing I was sure of. I didn't want to go through that again, because it was like, but since that happened, the whole issue doesn't bother me anymore. I have the memory and I can discuss it, but it doesn't affect me like it used to. And then.
So yeah, explain to me, for someone who's listening, what the difference is when you say you have to do the therapy. What's the difference between someone going and doing maybe the protocol you did, ayahuasca first, and then the other things that led up to LSD? What's the difference between doing it on their own and then doing it? And how did you do it that was different? There was a therapist there that did what?
It's a guide. I'd say mine were more guides.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. But they have been through it many times. And, at the end of the day, the psychedelics make you open to experiencing the issues again, and doing it with a guide and getting to the meat of it, where you need to cauterize the wound. That's what you need to do. And to just, you can't do it by yourself. And, maybe somebody can, and I'm not aware of it, but you can't do it by yourself. And then the other thing is there's as Michael Pollan will gladly point out, there's a number of ways that it could go south if you're not a right candidate for this here. And if that starts to happen, it's best to have an experienced guide with you to get you through it. That makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
So I think just to do it on your own is kind of ixnay.
Yeah. I would agree, and I would assume so. I just want to make sure it's clear for people who are listening that it's definitely the way to go.
Now, one of the things, if you're open to it, I would like to talk about PTSD and how it differs, and it is almost completely different for veterans than it is for civilians.
That's so funny because I was going to ask you that earlier. What is the difference?
Well, I think there's four big differences. Now, I'll point out, I was talking with a dear friend of mine, Dr. Rachel Yehuda, today, and she heads up the Mount Sinai Center for Psychedelic Healing. She's chief psychiatrist. I like her so much. Our foundation gave them a $5 million grant to help them develop a program for veterans, and she specializes with veterans. But what she told me was way back when it came out that PTSD was something that we need to deal with, the Veterans Administration, and again, and this is not on them, it's just no way of knowing, used the therapy that was given to rape victims, which is a horrific, got to be a horrific mental trauma to suffer, and so the therapy they came up with worked great for them, didn't work at all for veterans, and some of the reasons there were is, for example, most victims of civilian trauma, they want to be like they were before the event. They want to be like the way they were before the event. Now, veterans are proud of what they've done, and they're proud of their training as a group. And a veteran will rarely say that because they're proud of the training they have and what they did in the military. A civilian PTSD sufferer doesn't want to experience anything again like what happened that caused their PTSD, that traumatic event. Most of the guys in the military, combat veterans, would do it again. All right. Most veterans are not treatable, or it's very difficult to treat them by someone who is not a veteran and has no idea what they went through. And part of that is because the veterans go through and get their experience as a group. And as they do that in combat, there are many moral dilemmas or moral choices that you have to make in a moment's notice that for somebody who wasn't there, literally, it's not possible to understand. And when you add to that fact, okay, that it's not possible to understand, the veteran will always default to protecting his fellow veterans and not do anything that'll get them in a situation that he'd rather they not be, particularly if that individual's the cause of it. So the veteran won't even talk about it. It is something. I mean, I'll give you an example of a moral dilemma. I was walking point one time, and point is you're walking first in your formation, and we're going through a village, and it's at sunset, past sunset, just the last twinkles coming through the trees, and I'm walking through these bushes that are overgrown, and all of a sudden this noise of somebody moving at me really quick happens, and I had my rifle down where I was looking for traps, threw my rifle up, took it off safe, and came this close to pulling the trigger. It was a young boy getting water home for the night when he probably was out goofing around doing something he shouldn't, and there he was, and Maria, I didn't shoot him. Now, I've thought about that a million times, and had that been an enemy soldier, I would have been dead. Now, as I review it, that is one of the wonderful things God did for me, that I didn't shoot him, because I don't have that on my memory. And I've thought about, I wonder what he's doing today. And for sure, no matter what he's doing, if he's still alive, he remembers me.
Hmm.
So there you go. But I mean, that's the type of stuff. And let's say that I did shoot him, right? Then you see, right? You see how that's a dilemma?
Yep.
Yeah, you just don't want to talk about it, right?
Because no one would understand.
There you go. No, because they weren't there.
Yeah,
They just
you're right.
possibly. And I mean, of course you don't want to shoot a kid, right? Of course you don't. But in combat, sometimes you don't know it's a kid, you know?
Yeah.
So the other thing is most civilian trauma happens by theirself, the individuals alone, maybe in a group, but the group that it happens to was not a group before. In veterans, it happens in a group, the combat you experience, the guys you serve with, but you were a group before that happened. And also when it happened again and again and again and again. And that's why veterans are most effectively treated by veterans that have the same experience. And that may work well for, I mean, that probably also works well for sufferers of civilian trauma, but it's particularly important for veterans. So that's the four differences.
Wow. It makes a lot of sense. And I never thought about it from all those different angles.
That's what our dear friend Rachel Yehuda has developed at Mount Sinai. God bless her.
Well, I'm looking forward to hearing good news on the advancement of the trial and to be able to help all of these soldiers and servicemen and women who are affected so deeply by PTSD, because it affects their ability to work. I mean, obviously you were able to white knuckle through it, but so many people are jobless, then they become homeless, and it's a real downward spiral, and they could be incredibly contributing members of our society, and if they got the help that they needed.
Well, that's true. It's 100% true. I was fortunate. I was jackpot lucky because the way I managed my PTSD is I buried myself in my work. And when I was working at Parsons Technology, I did everything plus wrote the code. I used to work 60 hours straight. And I come to work, let's say Monday morning at 8. I'd work through Tuesday morning at 8, Wednesday morning at 8, and Wednesday morning at 8 at night, I'd start to hallucinate.
Bob, do you think work-life balance would have led you to be a billionaire?
I don't know.
It must be hilarious for you to hear everybody say, oh my God, I need work-life balance. And you're like, I worked 60 hours straight.
Yeah, go for it. There you go.
That's so funny. 60 hours, man. Yeah. You can't, I don't think you can accomplish great things unless you put the work in. At some point, I think at some point you can maybe lessen things. Like I think everything I've read about you and how you manage I think it was 14 different companies.
Yes.
Is because you have managers that you trust and you allow them to do their thing. So you can now enjoy your weekends and go golfing. Maybe you weren't doing that in the early years, right?
Not at all. Not at all.
Yeah.
Nope. So, one of the things that I always gives me a smile is when I hear somebody say, I work smart, not hard. Well, the thing I know is the person that works smart usually works for somebody that works hard. and that's
hilarious.
That's the way it is.
Yeah. Yeah. So since we have you and you do have so many great managerial tips, give us your top tips in managing.
Well, your top tips, first of all, the number one thing is why you're doing what you're doing. So I always say you need to do something that you like. And matter of fact, my father always used to tell me, when you love something, it tells you all its secrets. to me, I was just blessed to find computer science with microcomputers. I mean, I did that. I'm all self-taught. And, while, other people would buy the computers and buy software, which I do now, right? Back then, I bought it and I wrote the code for whatever I wanted it to do because I loved it. And I got to know it well. And that was the foundation for my first business. And then it also dovetailed into GoDaddy. But the first thing is to love what you're doing. The second thing is if you're starting a business that you're doing it for the right reason. If you do it to make money, if that's the only reason, you don't stand a chance. You got to be doing it because you really want to do something special and you want to make a difference. And if you do that, and that's truly why, you almost can't fail. Because you're doing it for all the right reasons, and that'll get noticed. The next thing is from a management standpoint, there's two groups of people that you need to make enthusiastic about what you're doing. The first group and the most important group, believe it or not, is not the customer. The first group is the employees. The employees have got to believe in what you're doing, and it is the employees that will be enthusiastic with the people, the customers they come in contact with. And what do we know about enthusiasm? Enthusiasm is it's contagious, and we always love when we come across it. So those things are rather simple, but profound. I mean, and they do make a big difference. And then beyond that, there's a million other things. It's like the person that knows the most about their business usually wins. If something's not managed, it'll deteriorate. So if you have an area of your business you haven't looked at for a while, I'll tell you what, go look at it. You'll find you got a lot of problems to fix. I mean, it's stuff like that.
Yeah. I think, what was the show? There was a show recently where you got to see a lot of what you're saying. It was the guy who invented the workspaces.
WeCrashed.
Yeah. Or WeCrashed. Did you see WeCrashed by chance?
I didn't know.
So it was fascinating because you see how they all were in this company because they loved it and they were excited by it and all of that. And then and they had enthusiasm. Everybody who worked there had this enthusiasm. And so what you're saying, we got to see in that show, which was really cool.
Great. Good. Well, yeah. I mean, what I'm telling you is very real. And when it exists, it makes for a very strong venture. And when it doesn't, it's difficult.
Yeah.
Much more than it would be otherwise.
And you obviously, I know you're funding MAPS, but I heard that you also donate a very large sum of money every 2 weeks. Is it true that you're donating $2 million every 2 weeks?
No, well, I wish I did, and I will one day. But we move to charity $1 million every 14 days.
Oh, well.
Average.
Not too shabby. I was close.
No, it is the most rewarding thing that I do. And most of it goes to, I'd say a significant portion goes to military causes to help the Semper Fi Fund for injured Marines, America's Fund for members of all the rest of the militaries. We help with suicide prevention. We help organizations that are having a hard time. Tough being a cop these days, I got to tell you. So we're helping them, and with the idea, we shouldn't defund them. What we should do is make them better. And just like everybody else, they got the same problems we do. So let's take some of that burden off their shoulders, right?
Yeah.
Where they're who we want them to be. So we do that. We do a lot of work with organizations that cannot raise money because of their cause, but yet it's a popular cause. Some of them are like, for example, you get, in Arizona, the fact that someone's here illegally or undocumented is a very controversial thing. But at the end of the day, this is America and they are people. So, and the way I look at it, they are people that are willing to risk their life to be here, that have strong family units. Isn't that what we need? But anyhow, I digress a little.
Yeah.
But
our country was built on immigrants.
When they're undocumented and they get a job, they make nothing. And yet there's a whole society, a whole economy that preys on them. They pay higher prices and so forth. So a big question is, they get a job, what happens to the kids? Well, the organization we fund watches them. So they drop the kids off in the morning. The kids are taught English and Spanish and history and have fun and have a couple square meals. So at the end of the day, when they pick the kid up, the kid is a little bit better than when they dropped them off. And so when the day comes, when those kids become Americans, and that's what they want to be, they'll be good Americans. I think they'd be good Americans anyhow, but they'll be better Americans. So that's one of the organizations we support. We support another one called 1 in 10, where all too often, if parents find out that one of their children is gay, they're out on the street, they turn their backs on them. Well, this organization finds those kids, gives them a place to stay, teaches them that they're part of the American dream, and you know what? Makes things better. So that's the type of stuff we do. Free arts for abused children. I mean, on and on and on. So that's the type of stuff that we do.
I love it. Maybe pediatric cancer will be in your future. I hear that they're so underfunded because it's such a small group. And I see these kids in the hospital and it breaks my heart.
Well, I'll tell you what, put them in touch with me if you're in touch with them, and we'll help them in some way.
Okay. I will put that at the top of my to-do list.
All right. Thank you.
Bob, you are incredible. I think your story is incredible. I love that you bought, by the way, this is my other favorite because my husband's very similar. I love that you bought, again, you have to confirm. These are stories we hear online, but I heard you bought a Rolls Royce, took the emblem off and put a Chevy emblem on it.
Well, here's the deal.
Tell me the story.
Well, here's the story. Lord have mercy. I bought a Rolls Royce. I got a deal on it. Now, I drive Chevys, right? And I identify with Chevy. I mean, and that's who I am, So I had the thing for a while, and I just could not bring myself to say I drove Rolls Royce. So what I did was I replaced all the badging with Chevy badging. Now, what happened was that was just when PXG was starting, and the Bentley company offered a set of golf clubs, and Rolls-Royce reached out to us and wanted to know if I'd be open to doing something for them. And my wife goes, "Oh, show them your Chevy."
Did you show them?
Well, no, I changed it back. I changed it back to a Rolls. And God being what he is, I sometimes think he's a prankster. Rolls-Royce said, we're not going to do this. We'll go a different way.
So then what did you do?
Sold it.
Buy Rolls-Royce.
And I'll tell you what, right now, I drive an Escalade, and I drive a Chevy Blackwing, and that's it.
I had you pegged for a Silverado.
Well, I got one on order.
You do?
Takes a while to get one these days. Yeah.
Hey. okay. I was like, he's a Silverado guy. I can tell.
And I also have a Ford Bronco. And that's
Nice.
and that's about as far as I'm going to stray.
That's
General
cool.
Motors.
We're jealous in here.
it.
We want the Bronco.
There you go.
Do you have a new Bronco or an old Bronco?
New one.
Oh, okay. The new ones are cool. I just drove in one recently. It's really nice. I'm a Jeep girl, so I like the Jeep.
Well, there you go. I mean, they're all wonderful. I like. I just had a Chrysler Durango and sold it or traded it in rather. And I like all three of our car companies. They're good. We should be proud of them. But me, there's something in my DNA that says Chevy.
I love it. I love it. Are you a Bud Light guy too?
Well, actually, yeah. I mean, I'll drink anything though.
Are you a beer guy?
No.
No?
I'm not a beer guy. I'm not a wine guy.
Really?
I drank a little whiskey and just had my knee. I just had my knee total replacement on my knee, and I would always have a whiskey or two with dinner. And what happened was, because of the way all this does, I developed gout in the other knee. And I'm telling you, that was one of the most brutal 4 or 5 days I've ever been through. And to be honest with you, Maria, I haven't had a drink since. It's been about 2 months.
Yeah, you have to be on a good anti-inflammatory diet probably, right?
Well, I did that. I just think I just didn't drink enough water. So, I mean, you sound like my wife, Renee. She wants to fix every aspect of my life. There you go. And
That's what we do here on our show. When you talk about doing something you love and having a mission and a passion, that's what Better Together is all about. I always say it's a lot easier if we do it together. So we're on the journey to getting better in all areas of life with the health and wellness focus.
So right now, the hardest thing I drink is lemonade.
Okay.
There you go.
Very nice. Very nice. Well, if you're ever in LA, I'll make you fresh lemonade from my trees.
All right. That sounds good to me.
I got my fresh trees. We'll get Miss Gruber over and we'll have some fresh lemonades.
All right. That sounds good. Good.
Bob, it was lovely chatting with you. Lovely meeting you. Bob is everything I thought he was going to be.
I love him. I just want to sit and listen to his stories all day, every day. He's such a sweet, sweet man. And like, oh my gosh, those stories. I knew some of them reading that Forbes article, but like the first couple nights, could you imagine? Oh my God. No, I know.
That's a lost generation. Those are people that just don't exist anymore.
I know.
I think. I mean, they do. I don't want anybody, like, sometimes I.
Yeah. No, I get what you're saying.
You know what I'm saying.
I do.
Oh man, I couldn't stop crying at one point.
I know. He
was telling, I forgot what part he was. Oh, and you could tell when he got emotional and then I would lose it. Mm-hmm. So I don't feel like I've cried in a long time, but man, Bob Parsons made me cry many times today.
Bob, I know.
So,
but it's so cool what he's doing now too. Like, just how amazing.
The what?
Just what he's doing now and like what he's funding, and I just think that that's so cool. It's like someone who has the money he has. It's like I love that he's just paying it forward and giving it back and putting it into what he believes and truly changing the world. I just think that's really amazing.
Yeah, I agree. It was really, really special to hear about those organizations that are getting money. I mean, $1 million every 14 days.
Holy cow. And how cool when you asked him about early on when he was like, oh, I haven't even thought about like being successful or whatever. I'm just like, dang, okay, Bob, like what? That was wild.
But I think he meant that it was never in his head. For him, he was always just thinking about doing, not kind of thinking, yeah.
Right.
I think that was my understanding of what he thought. Anyhow, friends, we will put info on Bob in the summary below this. If you haven't already hit subscribe on YouTube, please do and join us on this journey. Leave us an Apple Podcast review if you can. They really, really light up our days. And we're so grateful to all of you who share how this show makes you feel, has impacted you or inspired you maybe to take care of your health a little bit more. You can check out the website, mariamenounos.com, for the daily life hacks blogs, where we share kind of the aha moments of each episode so that you can just listen freely and enjoy. And I want to welcome our new Patreon members. We have some new Patreon members that joined recently, and we're really excited to have you guys on board and enjoying our monthly Heal events. If you haven't joined us, you can through the summary of this episode. For $10 a month, you get ad-free episodes and the Heal events every month on Zoom with us, where we all get to see each other, connect with each other, and benefit from the incredible practitioners and healers and people you see on this show every day in a more intimate way where you can engage with them. So join us through the link in the summary, or you can go to Better Together with Maria on Instagram and just click that link as well. In the meantime, be nice people, make good choices, and be present.
This podcast and all related content published or distributed by or on behalf of Maria Menounos or mariamenounos.com is for informational purposes only and may include information that is general in nature and that is not specific to you. Any information or opinions expressed or contained herein are not intended to serve as or replace medical advice, nor to diagnose, prescribe, or treat any disease, condition, illness, or injury, and you should consult the healthcare professional of your choice regarding all matters concerning your health, including before beginning any exercise, weight loss, or healthcare program. If you have or suspect you may have a healthcare emergency, please contact a qualified healthcare professional for treatment. Any information or opinions provided by a guest expert or host featured within website or on company's podcast are their own, not those of Maria Menounos or the company. Accordingly, Maria Menounos and the company cannot be responsible for any results or consequences or actions you may take based on information or opinions.